The Apostle Paul, I think, exemplifies this in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 when he writes these familiar words, but also challenging words. He's writing to the church at Corinth, and he reminds them of his travels and his experiences. Paul says, "Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews I became like a Jew in order to win the Jews. And to those under the law I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those who are under the law. To those who have the law I became like one not having the law. To the weak I became weak to win the weak. I've become all things to all people so that by all means I might save some. And I do this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings." So, church, we have to take the initiative. We have to go to where people are, regardless of where that may take us, and engage people in conversations, regardless of how they might respond to us. And the second part of this is that Jesus modeled and mentored those he was close to. He lived and taught counterculture, living consistently. He valued people more than traditions, which often got him in trouble with the religious leaders, as it still does today in many churches. Someone initiates change, and that's not the way we do it. Well, we have to change because the culture has changed. And if we want to reach people, we have to speak their language. And yet Jesus never compromised his message to fit the crowd, not at all. Though he would often adjust his manner and his tone to fit the audience. By that I mean he'd extend grace to the humble, and he would extend law to the proud. He always spoke truth and grace, but he tailored it to the audience. And that's what we need to do. Sometimes we're just, we just know one language. We're just firm. And we're not really very loving in our attitude or in our countenance or in our tone. And other times we go to the opposite extreme. Some churches will just talk about grace, 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 all grace and love. And it's not an either or, it's a both and. Jesus was full of grace and truth. And the church has to learn to speak truth gracefully and to speak grace truthfully without compromise. And that's what Jesus did. He preached to the masses, but he invested in the individuals. He asked questions to allow people to ask him questions. He listened to people and spoke in parables, which are simple stories that people could relate to and understand. You see, what I'm suggesting is that Jesus established a pattern for us to follow because he lived in a world very similar to ours. The question is, are we following in his steps? Are we being Christ in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our schools, in our careers and vocations? Now, I think it's important for us to understand that every church has a strategy and a structure that is perfectly designed to get the results that they're getting. So the question always is, are you satisfied? Are you individually and collectively as a congregation satisfied with the results you're getting as you seek to be Christ in your community? So if we want different results, if we want to engage more people and see the church grow both in size but also in depth, then we're going to have to make some changes in our strategy and in our structure. Allowing differences and reaching beyond common barriers like age or economics or background or even lifestyles. Recognizing that we're all created in the image of God and therefore we have intrinsic value and worth. Our strategy should be based upon the words of Jesus recorded for us in our text in Matthew 22, where Jesus says, after being asked by the crowds, what's the greatest commandment? which we Americans always like to boil it down to the simplest thing. What's the basic thing? That's what they were asking. And this is what Jesus said. Hearing their question, he had silenced the Pharisees and the Sadducees. One of them, an expert in the law, tested Jesus by asking, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment of the law?" And Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. For this is the first and the greatest commandment. But the second is like unto it, love your neighbor as yourself, because all of the law and all of the prophets hang on these two commandments."